News today from Capitol Hill, which should sound alarm bells for anyone and everyone that cares about our national security. In an effort to please Donald Trump and to hang on to his speakership, Speaker Mike Johnson has appointed Scott Perry and Ronny Jackson to the House Select Committee on Intelligence. Perry, you may remember, had his phone seized by the FBI as part of an investigation into his role as one of the chief architects in Congress of the scheme to overturn Donald Trump's defeat in the 2020 presidential election. Perry was the first to propagate the empirically proven insane Italygate conspiracy theory. He also, for good measure, defied a subpoena from the January 6th Select Committee. Then there's Ronny. Ronny Jackson's his name. He was demoted as a rear admiral in the United States Navy. He was someone who the Oath Keepers were seeking to protect during the insurrection on January 6th because the Oath Keepers believed he, Ronny Jackson, had, in the words of an Oath Keeper, quote, critical data to protect, end quote. So now the one committee on the House side that receives the most sensitive national security information gathered from allies all over the world, information used to inform policymakers who want to protect our country's national security, our men and women in the military, our covert operatives, our allies. That committee now has those two new members on it who have proven that they will put what's good for Donald Trump over what's good for this country, including on the day of the deadly insurrection. Joining our coverage, Democratic Congressman Gerry Connolly of Virginia. With us at the table, New York Times editorial board member, MSNBC political analyst Mark Gay. Andrew Weissman and John Heilman are still with us as well. Congressman, this was a what story for me, and then I wondered why it wasn't getting more attention. Your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I mean, Michael Johnson, Speaker of the House, could not have found two more wingnuts to put on the Intelligence Committee and degrade the Intelligence Committee as part of the institution than Ronny Jackson and Scott Perry. It's a stunning decision by the Speaker, and I think really shows Speaker Johnson's true colors. He is pandering to the right that makes Kevin McCarthy look moderate. And neither of these two gentlemen is qualified for the Intelligence Committee. Neither should ever be near the Intelligence Committee. And it's going to make cooperation between our counterintelligence operations and the intelligence services and the Congress much more complicated. It's a very bad decision for the country.
I mean, Congressman, Scott Perry seemed to think he was a criminal. Let me show you Cassidy Hutchinson's direct testimony about his interest in a presidential pardon.
That's right.
I have the transcript. She said, Mr. Perry asked for a pardon, too. Liz Cheney said, Mr. Perry, did he talk to you directly? Cassidy Hutchinson, quote, yes, he did. Let me play that for you.
Mr. Perry asked for a pardon too. I'm sorry, I need to cut you off.
Did he I forgot him directly?
Yes, he did.
So again, no one is looking for a pardon unless they think they've done something wrong. That person, and I think we've learned a lot over the last 8 years that sometimes the greatest threat to national security is someone who can be leveraged, who can be compromised. This is someone who, in his own estimation, was asking his president, Donald Trump, for a pardon.
Yeah, we know that Scott Perry had way too much to do with the tragic events of January 6th, for which he then begged, according to testimony, for a pardon from Donald Trump. As you said, you don't ask for a pardon if you're innocent. And the FBI, as you indicated earlier, has seized his phone and is looking at over 1,700 communications between Scott Perry and the White House at the time, the Trump White House, and with others. What his involvement was directly in the events that unfolded on January 6th remains to be seen. But subsequently, he joined forces with the insurrectionists in voting to overturn the election. Not an appropriate choice, and is feuding with the FBI. And a statement today that accused the existing members of the Intelligence Committee of blind obedience and accepting Intelligence Committee intelligence. And thank God he's been appointed, because he's going to be the one critical voice raising questions, is not only messianic, and narcissistic, but it really raises questions about what role he thinks he's going to be playing in trying to make sure that America is safe and secure, rather than carrying out feuds with an FBI and counterintelligence agencies with which he has grievances. With respect to Ronnie Jackson, he was, as you indicated, demoted. He was demoted because of heavy drinking. He was demoted because of abusive behavior towards subordinates and staff. He was known as the Speed King and handing out speed pharmacological agents in the Trump White House to keep energy levels high. This is not somebody who would pass a background check if required to serve on the Intelligence Committee, let alone the appropriateness of his being appointed by the Speaker of the House. This is a very sad day for the Intelligence Committee of Congress, and it's going to, frankly, jeopardize future cooperation between the executive and legislative branches when it comes to key intelligence protecting national security.
Congressman, I don't think they would pass a background check to be a staffer on the committee. Do I have that right?
I think that is right. I think they'd be thrown out. In fact, I don't think they'd even get to a second consideration. But it does raise questions, I think, about what is Mike Johnson doing? Democrats felt that they owed him in saving his seat. He wouldn't be Speaker today. He wouldn't make these appointments but for Democratic protection. I wonder how that looks in retrospect. Whether it's going up to the Trump Tower and defending Trump, whether it's condemning the results of a free and fair jury of 12 peers, or now these appointments. I think it really gives us insights into who Mike Johnson is and the inappropriateness of that gentleman sitting in the Speaker's chair in the House of Representatives.
Let me add to our conversation my colleague Ali Vitale from Capitol Hill, who may have an answer to that question. What is Mike Johnson thinking, Ali?
I asked him exactly for his rationale, Nicole, the question that you guys are talking about right now, because that was mine when I saw that this was happening. And of course, given the background of Scott Perry and having his phone seized and messages being looked through right now about his involvement around the January 6th insurrection. In the last few minutes, just in the hallway behind me, I caught up with Speaker Johnson and I asked him for the rationale. He said that Scott Perry has wanted to be on this committee for a while, that he is a good American who has served his country and who will add a lot to this committee. I also asked Johnson about the background of the phone seizure. And Johnson told me that in his mind, that was a closed matter that was behind us. But of course, what the congressman is saying here about the concern of that background, and of course, then what the Congressman Perry has said, even just today, about not being someone who will blindly follow the intelligence and who has been an outspoken critic of the Intelligence Committee, along with many other members of the Freedom Caucus that he once led. That is certainly a concern for people who are on this committee and who watch it as a pinnacle of what Congress does in terms of guarding national security, guarding national secrets, and then using it to inform the policy discussion that happens in these very hallways. But the Speaker, with a full-throated endorsement of the decisions that he made, not just for Congressman Perry, but also for Congressman Jackson.
Amazing. I mean, these are text messages that were surfaced through the January 6th Select Committee between Jeffrey Clark. Scott Perry, POTUS seemed very happy with your response. I read it just as you dictated it. Jeffrey Clark, I'm praying. This makes me quite nervous, and I wonder if I'm worthy or ready. Scott Perry, you are the man. I have confirmed it. God does what he does for a reason. I mean, radical, part of a criminal, what's been charged by the Department of Justice in the state of Georgia, a criminal effort to overturn a free and fair election in America, as someone Speaker Johnson thinks is what, a great addition to the House Intelligence Committee?
Part of a deep bench of people that they have to add to these committees, and obviously who was added just today.
Amazing. Ali Vitale, thank you so much for your reporting on this and for jumping on the air to talk to us about it. Congressman, I'll give you the last word.
Well, I believe that Speaker Johnson and his rationale for these two appointments has done a great disservice to the institution of Congress and to the country. And I think we have to really fasten our seatbelts as we move forward. These are two individuals that John Boehner would have called legislative terrorists. And today, Speaker Johnson, his successor, has promoted 2 legislative terrorists to 2 of the most sensitive positions in the U.S. Congress.